Okay. So let's start with guidance. So guidance is basically a skill that you can learn for free in Paramod, and it gives you whoever you buff for 1 SP, you give them like an immunity to stupidity. Uh, there are also like some other effects, but I've never used it for anything else other than stupidity, so I'm not really sure how the game functions with those other things. Um, but yeah, I think the skill is totally usable. I think it's a sort of a skill that you can use on. I would probably consider using this. Well, let's talk about stupidity, right? Like, realistically speaking, the only character in the game affected by stupidity every single time is gonna be Red Ogre. And stupidity, what stupidity does, it skips a turn for your character, so it's extremely bad. I mean, skips a turn for your character unless they're engaged. So it's extremely bad. I kind of like grabbing the basic version on usually like these sort of scout henchmen for Skaven. And basically you want to have like a really high initiative scout unit that is able to go before Red Ogre. I think a lot of people that play Red Ogre make the mistake that they don't actually make like a unit that is able to apply guidance to the Red Ogre before Red Ogre even has a chance to go. So I think that's kind of like their fault, if anything. But like the skill is considering that. I mean, if anything, the skill competes with like Swift Jump, and like having this sort of skill on every single character, it feels tragic. But for what it does, I think it's either like not bad or good. I'm gonna probably put this to good. Oh, you're right. The god tier category is a little bit. Should be fine now. Thank you. But as for the mastery, it's like easy to master. So it only costs like 2 skill points to actually take the skill. Yeah, I think this is also like usable. I think the way it should work, in my opinion, is that once you have like the scout and you apply this buff once on the Red Ogre, then you can like use somebody like your leader or like some kind of a hero or something like that, and then they apply the mastery on the Red Ogre afterwards, and then you can just stop worrying about your Red Ogre being stupid for more or less the entire match because it lasts for 3 rounds. So I think it's definitely usable. I don't think it's a bait to go for this. Obviously in the context of the Red Ogre. So I think the mastery is just not bad, in my opinion. Oh, Threaten. So Threaten is also like another free skill that you can a free skill that is also like competing with Swift Jump, or what do you call it, Intensity. And what it does, it basically, if you're engaged with the enemy and the enemy has some unused offensive points, you may try to threaten them. And threatening them, if they fail the threaten check, which is like a leadership check, if they fail, they will use some of their current offensive points to attack you. Overall, I feel like in PvE, sort of a skill is bad. I mean, I think this is mostly like a PvP skill, if anything. But I don't think it's exactly bad, because I mean, we have already started talking a little bit about like we have talked about melee resistance tanks before, and I think they're like really awesome. And like what usually happens in PvE is that enemy usually refuses to attack your melee resistance tank in PvP. So they end up with a lot of offensive points that they don't that they refuse to spend, because they would prefer counter-attacking something that they are actually managed to hit. So in that sense, like Threaten has like a purpose, because you're able to bait all those offensive points out with your melee resistance tanks, and then you are able to, yeah, if you manage to use all the offensive points from the enemy, then mm, they can use those offensive points on something else. So I think this is a sort of a thing you would just get on like a melee resistance tanks. And I think it's like okay, if anything. I wouldn't personally pick this up on like a zealot or anything. I think the biggest issue that the skill has is that it is the cost. That it costs like 1 SP. But for like an unmastered skill, I think it's fine. I think it's really fine. Yeah. I think this is fine as it is. I don't really, because there was like talks that it could be, this skill could be remade to break stances, but I don't really like the idea of that. I think if anything, like, if I imagine that this skill would break stances instead, I feel like that would be kind of a nerf to ghouls or like Dark Souls, like characters who don't necessarily need to invest anything into leadership. So I don't really like that idea, but I feel like currently it is usable, like it has some purpose in the game, in my opinion. Okay. As for the mastery costs 2 skill points, and basically it just gives you like a higher chance. I mean, the higher chance is obviously like very nice, because I'm not sure if you are even able to get consistently all the attacks out of the enemy with just the unmastered version, but with the master version you might. I think if the master version was either like 100% consistent every time, I think it would be like a little bit more usable. Or if the master version made the SP cost to like a 0 or something, then it could be, the skill could be more attractive in my opinion. But as it currently stands, I don't think there's like too many differences between these two skills. I think you're just better off with just grabbing the basic one. So I'm gonna put this one to, I think I'm gonna put this into bad. Yeah. So the next one is a taunt. That's kind of a relevant thing. So basically what taunt does, when you are engaged in a melee combat, you may taunt an enemy for 1 SP. The basic version applies a debuff, which it makes disengaging, running away, and delaying 2 SP higher. And the mastery for 2 rounds, and this one for 3 rounds it gives, I believe it ups it to like 4 SP for all of those skills. So actually, like, I don't think this skill is bad. I kind of like it. Kitten Ball was also kind of talking about the skill, that the AI really loves the skill, and I think, yeah, in those situations, like when you come up against AI, it's very noticeable when the AI actually uses it against you and messes up your plans and stuff. But I think this skill is like totally usable for how cheap it is. And the effect is like very relevant, especially in PvP, where people love to disengage, they love to run away, and they also like to delay. You know, like imagine if you manage to use this sort of a skill on the impressive. Like impressives usually also like love to delay and stuff, and it can completely mess up. It can completely mess up the enemy. Yeah. But also, I think the skill could be useful in combination with some SP reducing skills such as hamstring, or maybe like a pinning shot, right? In that case, like the enemy already has like a significantly reduced amount of SP to work with in general, and they cannot really afford to disengage from the combat, you know? So I think the skill, like, I think the skill is also like between not bad and good, but it's a skill that I actively like thought about like using before. So I think I'm just gonna put this. Mm, I'm gonna follow my gut, even though I have not used this skill ever. I'm gonna follow my gut because it costs only 1 SP. I'm gonna put this to good. Yeah. As for the mastery, uh, I think the mastery just costs like way too much. It costs like 6. Yeah, it costs 6 skill points in total. I think it's just kind of unusable. So I think it just kind of ends up being bad. I think you have like at this point you have over invested into this skill, and it's too much. I think it's too much. I think you're better off like stacking this sort of effect with like the SP reducing abilities. Okay, the next one is Hold Ground. Basically, it's like an AoE buff that you can apply to your allies, and you can increase their parry and dodge by 15% for 2 rounds. And the mastery, I believe you apply the buff for 3 rounds, but it's by 20%. And I believe the skill was also nerfed for some reason. It used to be like 30% dodge and parry that you could give to your entire team. Mm. I guess those values were kind of high. Mm. And I believe the skill also costs like 2 SP, so it's like generally easy to apply. Yeah. I think this sort of a skill is like a much, much better alternative to something like study. Like if you have some sort of characters who need to have a little bit of a higher dodge, a little bit of a higher parry, then I think you're best off like investing into this skill. Oh, but these characters, just to make it clear, these characters cannot afford to use like the passive slots or on anything else. Then I think you're best off using like a hold ground ability on them to buff their dodge and their parry, because you're not reliant on having like an enemy around. You can just do it whenever you want. I suppose there's like this restriction. I'll have to check the skill itself, because hold ground, because I don't think you can use it. Yeah, you cannot use this if you are engaged. Yeah, you cannot use the skill if you are engaged, but it's fine. You can just kind of like prepare it or like not have that character engaged or something. I think this is like not bad skill. I think it's not bad. And the mastery is also just kind of not bad. Um, or maybe let's put like the mastery, because I believe the mastery also increases the range, which makes it a little bit more flexible. Yeah, it increases the range to 20 meters, so it's like even easier to apply. So I think this is just like also not bad. Okay, as for the insult, it's basically a debuff. It costs 3 strategy points, and the basic version applies a debuff which gives minus 10% melee resistance against the target, and for 2 rounds, and the mastery for 3 rounds it gives minus 15% melee resistance. Yeah, I think the skill is actually just really good. You can also just stack them if you want. That's also a possibility. And you can use them while engaged is probably the most important thing. I really like using this skill, especially on Skaven, because they have an easier time managing their SP with their movement and stuff. And just like applying this minus 10% melee resistance debuff, it's relevant, right? If you are able to, for example, buff your hit chance from 85% to 95%, but this is completely amazing, right? Because like 85%, what is it? It's like, I mean, 85% is like free in, no, it's free in 20. It's free in 20. Uh, yeah, it's free in 20. Okay, I don't know the point I'm trying to make. It would have been like easier, like putting it like at 80% and 90%, because 80% is 1 in 5, 90% is 1 in 10, 95% is 1 in 20 that you actually miss the target. So if you're able to like get your hit chance to 95%, it's like the most ideal situation because it's only 1 in 20. So it's a huge deal. So this skill is I don't know if I use this on every single character. Maybe I should be using this skill more, if anything. So I think it's like somewhere between insane and really good. As for the mastery, hmm, I think it's usable, but I don't really use it. I think if you're going for the mastery, you probably want to stack it with also the basic version, in my opinion. I probably wouldn't go for it otherwise. I don't know if it's good enough otherwise, in my opinion. So I think this also ends up being kind of... I think we can just kind of put it into good, in my opinion. But I think this one is like more of a in the good and like top of not bad territory. Ooh, intimidate. Um, hmm. So we have like the basic intimidate. It's basically like a check against enemies' leadership. It costs 3 SP, and basically it's kind of like the, what do you call it? It's like attracting lure, right? But for everybody, and it's at like the 9 to 15 leadership scale. So like the basic version gets plus 25%. The enemy gets plus 25% to their leadership skill check. And the mastery, they get minus 5%. To be honest, I'm not really like a fan of like the basic version, just because I feel like it's not really... I don't think it's really consistent enough. I feel like it's usable, but if you're gonna be using the basic version, I feel like you should have like the expectation that you're gonna fail a lot. And it's not like a sort of a skill that you can rely on. Like, not to mention, this sort of a skill does not work against enemy units that don't want to disengage, right? I think the basic version, because of that, just kind of ends up being okay, but I don't really like it. I don't really like it. I don't really like using it. As for the mastery, I think the mastery is much, 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 much more better. Uh, because like the biggest strength of intimidate is that you're able to convert your SP into something offensive. You know, like you're not usually able to deal damage with your strategy points. With intimidate, you can do that, and that's like really powerful. And I like the mastery version because it's much more consistent. This can be also used for, what do you call it? For impressives, or like other units like ghouls, or well, not ghouls. They don't really use this. So maybe like the LGT ghoul, maybe that one. But I don't know if LGT ghoul even has enough leadership for that. Probably not. But impressives, they usually have a ton of stats to work with, and some of the impressives are able easily to get that 15 leadership. Somebody like, for example, the Maiden, but I think the Maiden is better off using Quick Prayer for their SP. And but Ogre, for example, like Ogre has a like super easy time getting to his 15 leadership naturally. So I think like this skill. Hmm. I guess it depends if the skill actually manages to proc. Like, this is also like one of the ways for you to deal with melee resistance tanks, if you manage to trigger the intimidate or not, and then you can focus on something else. Um, I'll probably put this into insane, because if you do actually manage to make intimidate work, the fact that you're able to convert your SP into something offensive is really insane in my opinion. But it's kind of awkward. It can be kind of awkward. I don't know. I feel like let's just kind of put this. Let's put this on the top of really good. Maybe let's put this on top of really good. But if it works, it's insane. So let's assume it works. Okay. So the next skill that we have is I think it's cool-headed. So basic version basically gives you plus 20% chance to all alone resists, and mastery gives you plus 60% chance to your all alone resist. And you need like 3 to 9 leadership for these skills. Um. Hmm. I feel like the basic version is kind of takeable on very specific henchmen, and these henchmen basically needs to have a shield, and this shield has like an enchantment which gives them like plus 40% chance to their fear resistance and their terror resistance. Right? So if you usually have some kind of a henchman with like the 40% fear and terror resistance shield, this character usually ends up having like, although they have like maxed up the terror resistance and fear, they usually end up having like a low all alone resistance. So you can boost it with this skill, and that's kind of how you can use it in your builds. Um, yeah. You could also like alternatively use this on a Doomweaver, but I think Doomweaver kind of likes the master version more. But it's also kind of questionable if Doomweaver even wants to use the skill or not. We're kind of like talking about like a Doomweaver that wants to get surrounded or wants to like throw down a party in the middle of all of the enemies. Um, so let's just start with like the basic version. Like other than that, one specific scenario of the 40% fear and terror resistance shield, I don't think the skill has much of a use. And I think, like Itempo said, I think the skill like, would be more usable if it was actually easy to, not sorry, trivial to learn. Actually, um, I think it's just kind of okay. And this one, um, the thing is that if your character usually has the issue with like they're all alone resistance, then this character is also probably going to have issue with their fear and terror. And I don't think you can really afford going like for both of these skills. I mean, again, you can like resolve it with that shield, or you could also alternatively resolve it with Rallying Cry, but we'll get to that skill later. It basically gives immunity. I believe, if I'm not wrong. But there's a skill that gives immunity to all alone tests. Um, so the mastery, um, I think the mastery is also just kind of okay, but I'm not a fan. Okay, so the next one that we have is Nurse of Steel, and that basically gives you plus 20% terror and fear resistance, and the mastery gives you plus 60% fear and terror resistance. Um, yeah, I think the basic version is actually really good. Just because it has like this very nice number of 20%, so that you're able to, like, normally with your characters, if let's say that you have 10 leadership, it means that you have like 50% terror and fear resistance. Then you can use like a pendant for 65% resistance, and then you can use a pendant of courage, which is going to give you like 80% fear and terror resistance. Then you can slap on it this skill, which is 20%. So you're gonna have like a very nice number of 100% fear and terror resistance, and it's really nice because you're gonna have basically a consistent Serenity tank, but will not have like the issue of getting like a 5% chance that you sometimes may or may not fail the fear and terror. I mean terror more specifically, because if you fail terror, then you're probably going to die, in my opinion. Um, yeah. So this skill, like the basic version, I use it on a lot of characters. I even use it on like damage dealers because like the melee characters, like if they fail terror, and imagine that they have like 20 weapon skill. In that case, they lose 38% chance to hit their target. And that's like a huge deal. If you have like some kind of a safeguard against error, yeah, then it's like really good. Um, yeah, I'm a huge fan of the skill, so I feel like I kind of want to put this into insane, just because I feel like the effect of terror is completely insane and like way too strong. So if we have some kind of a skill that's gonna make you consistently counter that skill, I think it's gonna be really good. Mm, maybe put this like at the top of really good. I can put it into insane. I don't think it's quite. I don't think it's god tier at all. As for the mastery, this skill is kind of liked, in my opinion, by characters that already passed their all alone resistance checks, or like, sorry, for characters that have immunity to their all alone checks, but they don't have, what do you call it? They don't have like fear and terror resistances there. So we're talking about somebody like Sigmar Purifier, and we're also talking about somebody like Marauder, right? So you kind of want to use those skills on them, the skill on them. It's definitely usable. Is this easy to master? I'm gonna like double check because I feel like it is. Yeah, it is easy to master. I think it's definitely not bad. Definitely not bad, but in my tier list, it's like good. Like resisting terror consistently is a good thing, and you cannot go wrong with that. Yeah. Okay. The next skill that we have is inspiring. The basic version basically gives you +5 to all of your stats. Sorry, to all of your like mental maximums. Plus some morale on top of it. And Master gives you 5 mental points and some more morale on top of it. I think if you're using this sort of a skill, I don't know. I thought about like using this skill before on an ogre, and basically what this would translate to is you would just use some of your mental points into intelligence. So in that case, you can like use this sort of a skill to gain 5% magic resistance and 5% range resistance. For characters who do not care about like leadership or something like that. I think it's either like okay or kind of bad. I'm gonna put this into like kind of bad, in my opinion. I don't know. I feel like I have a hard time going for this skill, if anything. And the mastery version, again, I'm like usually not a fan of these sort of skills, which give you +5 to some sort of a stat. I think you're usually just better off investing your skill points. Sorry, you're just better off using like a different character who has better stats to improve, to be able to use the build that you want to use, or something like that. Okay, give me a second. It's my, I think it's my, yeah. Where is it? I need to turn off my thingy. Okay. So the mastery, you can. I think like comparing the skill to all the other like maximum increasing skills and stat increasing skill, I feel like I'm getting like the least out of this one, if anything. I find it hard to use on characters in general, so I think I'm just gonna put this into kinda bad. Yeah. Demoralize. So demoralize basically it's like a debuff. If you manage to hit an enemy with a melee attack, they get -1 leadership, and -1 leadership for 2 rounds, and the mastery gives -2 leadership instead for 3 rounds. Kittenpaw thinks this like skill has kind of like potential. I feel like it, like if you want to make some kind of a build which focuses on the all alone, on the fear and terror resistances, I think you're better off just going with the dismay runes, either for the head or the weapon. But like even like when you compare this sort of a skill, like the basic version, to those dismay runes, like 1 leadership gives you 3%. It gives you like 3%. What do you call it? 3% like all alone resistance. 3% fear and terror resistance. I don't think the skill does enough. Granted, like I understand that. I mean, why else would you want to like reduce leadership, right? It's for those resistances, but also like you can make your intimidate more consistent by reducing enemies' leadership. So I guess that's a thing that could be used, but I kind of have a hard time seeing it. And as for the mastery, like this goes like way too much, like 6 skill points for this, and like what does it do? It reduces the enemy's resistances by 6% instead. But this May rune is just gonna like give me like way more. The head enchantment and the weapon enchantment. Oh, I suppose there's also like the interaction that if you start attacking like the enemy leader and they try to do their like route check, then you may have also that issue. But you're gonna be able to route your enemy more consistently as well, because they're gonna be failing the checks. I mean, this one is usable, but I don't think it's like good enough. So I think it's just kind of bad. And like the mastery, I think you over invested into the skill at this point. Maybe if this skill was usable on somebody like a support archer, maybe if this sort of a skill was usable on like ranged units and range attacks as well, maybe it would be better. Maybe then I could kind of see it. The way it is right now, I don't see it. I can understand that you can like pimp out your entire team with demoralize, but I'm not sure if that's like a correct choice for your skill points, if anything. I think those dismay runes should be enough for what you're trying to do. Yeah, demoralize also works on intimidate tests and route checks. Yeah, just to detail, and it also works for the threaten, but that's a little bit less relevant. I mean, it could be relevant for making for the melee resistance tanks. Ooh, and we're coming up to Serenity. Wow, what a skill. This skill is like really amazing. Probably one of the best skills in the game. It used to be also like the basic version. Let me just explain what it actually does. So the basic version gives you plus 10% melee resistance every time you pass any all alone test, any fear test, any terror resistance test, and for 2 rounds. This one gives you plus 20% melee resistance for 3 rounds every time you pass like any fear, terror, and all alone check. Basically, the basic one, I think it's like incredible. It's so freaking good because like what does it translate to like in reality? Like you can have henchmen which are you can easily like make henchmen which have like 100% terror resistance. And this skill for that henchman translates over time, or can translate, or has the threat of translating into plus 20% melee resistance. And that plus 20% melee resistance is like a really huge amount. Yeah, like you don't get, like from passive skills, you can at most get like 5% melee resistance. And from this skill, you can get like plus 20% melee resistance. Oh, this skill also used, it also got nerfed. It used to be like 15%, and that was like completely insane. So it was even better. Like it used to be like 15%. Like some people even like wanted to get buffed back to 15%. Bro, like Serenity with 15% was completely insane. It was easily like a god tier skill. But like this with the 10%, I think it's still really freaking amazing. But yeah, like melee resistance tanks and dodge characters love this skill. So why does the skill, like why does Serenity go so well for dodge characters? So dodge characters, they invest a lot of points into their agility. And like, why do we even bother with having like agility in the first, like dodge characters in the first place, when like parry is usually better? It's because of like, well, there are some attacks in the game which are able to pierce parry, right? But they cannot pierce dodge, and this is like kind of like why dodge exists, in my opinion. And also like these sort of like scary characters who also have like these parry piercing attacks, they also usually have like a fear and terror on them, right? So like the puzzle just kind of like works that like if you're going for a dodge character, you also should have like a fear and terror resistance in Paramod. And in Paramod also like terror reduces your agility to 1. If you have like a squishy dodge character that has a reduced agility to 1, they're just going to die. They're gonna be dead, and you don't want your dodgy character to die, right? So you, with your dodgy characters, you like to have 100% dodge resistance. 100% terror resistance. And what pairs really nicely with 100% terror resistance, being in combat with like the enemy, and like if you have 100% terror resistance, you also kind of will like naturally want to go for Serenity. Yeah, it just kind of like pairs up so freaking nicely. If this skill was still like 15% melee resistance, it would be like the easiest god tier out there ever. But like this, I'm gonna just put this into insane, but I think it's still like between god tier and insane, if anything. As for the mastery, mastery gives you plus 20. Okay, maybe let's talk about like another thing, like why is Serenity so much better in Paramod than Vanilla? I mean, Vanilla, yeah, you could. I think like this skill was kind of irrelevant. Because it lasts only 1 round. But in Vanilla, if you manage to pass a terror resistance check, then on the next round you would be immune to it. In Paramod, on every single round you make the terror check. So you're able to farm every single round 20% melee resistance. So you can get out of this skill like a total of 60% melee resistance, which is completely insane. It's like wow, you know, like your melee resistance tanks, your Serenity tanks, they are going to ascend to godhood, you know. So you really just like, you're just kind of set if you have like this skill, and you can just use the rest of the skills. Yeah, you also just want to use, like, if you have a Serenity tank, you also want to make the Serenity tank kind of immune to range attacks, which can be helped by, what do you call it, the careful approach, right? That exists, that can help you. And also just put some magic resistance so that it doesn't get sniped by the Warlock, which is what I'm doing to Kitten with his leader who doesn't have any magic resistance. I'm sure he'll find like a talisman or something later, but yeah. Yeah, this is like a god tier skill. Okay, yeah, 1 round and not stackable, so cannot even get benefit from passing all alone and terror in the same raid. Worthless. Yeah. Oh, but like in Paramod, can you get? Oh yeah, you can get like the benefit like from passing the all alone and terror at the same time, right? I think that's the thing. Yeah, because it's stackable. Yeah, it's stackable, so yeah, you can use it. So yeah, but like if the enemy like starts surrounding your Serenity tank, um, okay, I mean you're winning, I guess. Yeah, that was like the funniest thing because Leos was like playing like early on in the tournament. Leos was playing somebody, I don't remember who it was, some kind of witch hunter player, and he kind of just like went out there with his like captain, and he started getting like surrounded by the enemy. I was like, what the hell is this guy doing with his captain? I think he's like suiciding him. And then it was like the Serenity trap, so it's really funny. Okay, so Force of Will is 9 to 15. Okay, okay, let's see what the bar says. I had a Serenity tank once, double teamed by Thrall and Vampire. All alone, fear and terror test on turn. Yeah, yeah. Or it's like the worst thing when you sometimes like engage an AI with like your fear and terror character, and then you find out that they have actually Serenity, and you're like, oh fuck, I didn't notice. Or you like all along that character. Fun times, fun times. Playing against AI. The deadliest Serenity is the one that you don't expect. Okay. But let's talk about Force of Will. Yeah, the basic version, it costs like 9 leadership. This one costs 15 leadership. Sorry, the master costs 15 leadership. The basic gives you plus 20% stun resistance, and the mastery gives you plus 60% stun resistance. I actually really like Force of Will. Yeah, and the basic version is it's kind of usable, but I don't really like it. Maybe if you're like greedy with your skill points, I can see this being used on, what do you call it? The Doomweaver, right? But in that case, you kind of need like 20 intelligence. Okay, let's talk about like stun resistance a little bit. If your character has 20 intelligence, you're going to have like 40% stun resistance. If you combine it then with Force of Will, you're gonna have 60% stun resistance. Then you can combine the skill with Helmet. That's gonna give you additional 20% stun resistance, so you're gonna be at 80%. And if you use like the Helmet enchantment, you're gonna have 100% stun resistance. But in that case, I feel like the head enchantment is kind of wasted. I think you're usually better off with like taking some kind of I think you're better off with taking some kind of a different head enchantment, in my opinion. But it's usable. It's definitely usable. I think whenever you're investing into stun resistance, you should always go for the 100% stun resistance chance. Just because it would like serve you as like an alternative against crit resistance. Sorry, as like an alternative to crit resistance. Yeah, because you arguably don't care. You arguably don't care about crits if you're not getting stunned along with it. Arguably. Um, as for the mastery, I think mastery is actually really freaking good. Because it gives you like 60% stun resistance. So once you combine like 20 intelligence, which is 40% plus 60, you're gonna get 100% stun resistance. And you don't need to like wear some kind of a funky helmet or anything. You're gonna have 100% stun resistance. And this means you can kind of ditch going for any crit resistance if you are not playing like a heavy armor character. Basically, I think this skill is just really good on like arcane casters such as Magister or Warlock. I really love this skill on Warlock. Kitten was like mentioning that this sort of a skill can just be replaced with a Clarity Potion. But at the same time, like I feel like my Warlock is so SP heavy. Like you would also like to use like that minus 15% magic resistance, the 15% magic resistance piercing on your character. And then I really like also using like the quick casting. And then I also need like some SP for a spell potion so that my casting is more consistent. So very often I find with my warlocks that it can be difficult to try to find that 2 SP. And also like another thing, right? What is the deadliest thing? What is the deadliest thing that can happen to your caster when you're casting like so much? It's either that well, you get 9999, you just die as the deadliest thing, but the second deadliest thing is like if your character kind of just gets stunned before it can get into cover. If your like warlock or caster gets stunned, that's an extremely deadly moment for your caster, and you would like to avoid it. And just like being able to be immune at all times during the game to one of those Tzeentch's curses it feels really good. It feels really good, basically. The last deadliest thing that can happen to your like mage character in general is that if you get like Tzeentch lashed, and you lose or your all of your SP and you're like in an awkward spot, but you can resolve that issue with exhaustion, right? So I really like this skill. I really like taking this on casters, so I think it's really good. I can easily put this to here. And warlocks don't have a hard time getting to 15 leadership, because they have like so many mental stats, right? Yeah. Okay, this skill. I forgot the name of it. I need to double check. Commander? I think it's called Commander. I think it's called Commander. Yeah, I think it's Commander. It's probably Commander. Okay, so Commander. So all the rest of the skills that we have here are more or less leader skills. Let's start with Commander, or passive skill. So Commander gives you plus 10% route check chance, basically. And it doesn't cost anything. It just costs like a passive slot, which is the cost itself. And the mastery, it costs like 2 skill points, because it's easy to master, and it gives you instead like 30% route check chance. And yeah, like basically what the skill allows you to do is to be able to ditch some of your leadership on your characters. Um, if you like, for example, playing like an undead team and you don't really want to invest into leadership, you still want to make sure that you're able to pass your route checks, because you're usually easy to route. And this sort of issue, like True Griffin had this sort of an issue with his warband, but I think he fixed it by now. And yeah, like this is like also like one of the ways to fix that issue. Also, like I believe Hada had a lot of issues with his morale, with his like Chaos Warbands, but it's because he never invested into leadership. So like if you don't want to, if you want to create characters without investing into leadership, you should probably be investing into this skill so that you have like 100% route check chance. I believe if you have like at least 18 leadership, because it's 18 times 4, so it's 40, 8, 16, 4, 32, 72. So that's 72 plus 30, that's 102%. So as long as you get 18 leadership and this skill, you cannot be routed as long as your leader lives. And you can also then choose like whenever you want to get routed, right? Which may be relevant in some PvP matches. The basic, I think the basic is just bad. Like you don't want to, because it's not consistent enough. Like if you have, let's say that you have 20 leadership, right? That's gonna be 80 route check chance, because it's like leadership times 4, and like 80 plus 90%. Basically, what this skill in that situation does is that it changes your route chance from like 1 in 5 to get routed to 1 in 10, which is significant, but I think you would rather have the guarantee. I think this sort of a skill should have like should boost your route check chance from a 1 in 5 to 1 in 20. So I think this should be giving like plus 15% instead. And then I think it could be considerable to use. Kind of like the sister skill, right? Like the basic version. The basic version gives plus 15%. So yeah. Yeah, I think it's just kind of like bad. It's like between bad and kind of bad, but I think it's at the top of bad. Yeah, and the mastery is good because it has a purpose. It has like a very specific purpose for a very specific warband, and if you use it for that very specific warband, it should be good. And you should be happy about it. Okay. Let's talk about like retreat here. So retreat, it costs 3 SP. I believe it costs 3 SP. And it basically allows you to disengage one of your characters for them if they are able to disengage. If your character is not a spellcaster in Paramod, this is also going to cost like 1 less SP, which is relevant. And the range of this, the basic one, is only 15 meters. The mastery makes it cost like 2 SP, and it's gonna change the range to 30 meters. So yeah, I think I like this skill. I think this is like the go-to skill for all of the leaders, in my opinion, but have like any free active slot. I mean, what this skill competes with is like Swift Jump, in my opinion. So like depends if you want like a Swift Jump or this disengage thing. But this disengage thing can be really nice in a lot of situation. Retreat can be nice, especially in situations where you have some kind of like heavy damage characters. So, like for example, two-handed damage characters, right? So they're gonna strike for 2 offensive points, and then they're gonna strike again for 3 offensive points. But that means that they no longer have like any offensive points for disengaging. For example, from like a dangerous enemy, like a demon or like an enemy impressive, and so on. So your captain can take care of it by disengaging them for you, I guess is the way to put it, right? And then you don't have to like run away, like flee with your character and take damage. You can just fix that issue with the skill. Obviously, with this skill, you're gonna get to use it like less often, but yeah, I think it's really good. This is a really good skill. I think spellcaster leaders are also gonna have like a harder time actually using the skill. But I think it's neat. It feels very nice. And it does also like make you feel like a sort of a commander who is able to control the battlefield, so that's kind of cool in my opinion. I also like the mastery of the mastery, because it only costs like two points. And the range also matters, right? So you can like do your things from like 30 and like have your leader kind of like in the back in the safety. I also think it's like good. Like if I have some leftover points, I'm probably gonna be investing into this, and you may even like achieve a sort of a situation, especially like when you combine it with battle tank, because battle tank reduces the SP of these two by 1. So like this, with this one you can have like 1 SP cost retreat, and with this one you can have 0 SP retreat, which feels freaking nice. Yeah. Okay. The next one that we have is actually Rallying Cry, and it basically gives you like an immunity to all alarm. This one only gives it for 1 round, and it costs 3 SP, and I believe the range on it is also like 15. And this one is for 3 rounds, and the range increases to 30. Um, I think the free SP usage of the skill is. I mean, it's fine because it's gonna get reduced by battle tank, arguably. I think it costs too much, in my opinion. I think I have a really hard time going for the skill in general. It gives like that 2 SP. It costs like 2 skill points and 6 skill points for the mastery, but I think I have like a hard time going for the skill. I think the skill, like the basic one, it's just kind of awkward because you have to apply it over and over again. Um, yeah, probably on one character. And this one, I mean, it's nice. I mean, I can see some sort of a leader who specializes in this skill. Like I could see this, for example, being used in witch hunters, because witch hunters, they love stacking magic resistance, and if you can make some kind of, like for example, like those witch hunters, right? Their leadership really sucks, and like making them immune to leadership altogether, I think it's relevant. I think it's relevant. I just have a hard time going for the skill in general. Um, Also, like why this kind of works, you can also make some kind of like champion who is focusing solely on getting like as much armor as possible, but this sort of a character, this sort of a champion is gonna have issues with his leadership. So if you don't want your tanks to run away, or something, then you probably want to like give them immunity all alone. Like I could maybe see this like a sort of a thing for a ranged range support leader that is focusing on like firing shots and stuff, and like making sure that the front line holds. Maybe I could see that happening. Another thing is like this skill can kind of nicely stack with Armor of Righteous. In that case, you kind of like decide to ditch all of the leadership, and Armor of Righteous gives you, like the mastery version, gives you immunity to terror as well. So you kind of end up ditching like a lot of leadership with this sort of a skill. I mean, not necessarily leadership, but like terror resistance and such, and all alone resistance and such. I'm gonna put like the basic version to kinda bad. I think it's like between kinda bad and okay. And this one is also like between. I don't think it's like exactly bad. I can see why the skill can be useful, but practically speaking, I have a. I don't know. I've used it before, but I think it costs too much in my opinion. Let's talk about order. And why it's good, why it's so good, and why some things suck about order. So order here. It basically costs in Paramod 4 offensive points and 1 SP. This 1 SP restriction, it doesn't happen when you have like non-caster leader such as Witch Hunter Captain or the Captain himself, you know, or Possessed. Like, okay, I think if you are gonna be investing and making like a proper order leader, you're also gonna be investing into Battle Tank, because the Master Battle Tank also reduces the offensive points usage to 3 offensive points for both of these. But let's talk about what they actually do. So when you order somebody, that character, whoever you order, is gonna perform a normal attack against that target. Also, yeah, the mastery, I think it costs like 6 skill points in total to get the mastery, but the mastery is gonna give you also plus 15% hit chance. Oh, and like the basic one also gives you plus, it has like 15 meters range, and the mastery has 30 meters range. Yeah, like the basic one. If you're gonna be like using a proper order leader, you kind of have to pay the tax of also having the battle tank. So it doesn't cost like only like 6 skill points in total, but it costs like 10 skill points in total because of this skill. And that's kind of like, I don't really like that. There were like some thoughts of maybe making order cost like 3 offensive points and 2 skill points. What the fuck am I talking about? 2 strategy points and 2 strategy points instead. I don't know if it would be better or if it would make like order too good, but I kind of like the idea because it would give like those older leaders some flexibility in what they actually do with their passive skill slots. And I think like if you have like the freedom of expression of what you can go for, um, like with your thingies, with your skill slots, and I think that's like good for the game in my opinion. But like, why is Order so freaking amazing? It is so good because you can make your leader a complete tank, and you are able to convert your tank. You're able to convert the offensive points of your tank leader to something to something that is actually useful. You know, like you can change it. This order skill is basically your ogre gets like 3 additional attacks. Your ogre that is gonna be able to hit for like 100 damage or something. Like that's extremely powerful. Another neat thing about order is that if you trigger like a parry with order, or like yeah, if you trigger like a parry, for example, or if the enemy has like any leftover offensive points, this attack cannot be counterattacked by the enemy. So that's also, there's like this also like strategical enemy of like when you use order in order to counter enemies counterattacks. And this is also what I did in like the PvP match against Lias, when I had a hard time actually killing his ogre, because his ogre had infinite counterattacks, so it was kind of a problem. Yeah, and as for like the basic version and the mastery, I think all of them are good, and both of them just kind of depend on what kind of like order leader you want to play. If you don't mind like getting into like the fight, then if you don't mind getting into the fight, then you are probably gonna be fine with like the 15 meters version. But I also like getting this one. Like there are often like some situations where you need that 30 meters range, just because usually your impressive is faster than your normal leader. So that 30 meters range can really matter. And that plus 15% hit chance can also like really matter in my opinion against like for impressives, especially if those impressives are stuck on a melee resistance tanks. So I think both of them are good. Yeah, I don't think I do anything wrong if I put both of them into God tier. Like the ability to make like an unstoppable tank and being able to use your offensive points on like attacks, I think it's really good. Uh, yeah, that is into to-do list. Yeah. Well, to be honest, it would mostly be a tad more relevant at low ranks, about the same in the late ranks. Maybe non-caster leaders could ditch battle tank then. Yeah, I think it would be like a very nice for non-caster leaders especially. But I think like even then, like non-caster leaders, I can still see them like going for the master battle tank, because like being able to use order without using any SP, it can be a huge deal. Like especially if you move a lot. Like for example, imagine like a captain, like you move around, you get into the position to order, but you still would like to have like your SP for a web of steel. It's like a difference between like being able to go into web of steel or not. So it makes things like more interesting in my opinion. And also like it could be like this change that you propose could be like more relevant for somebody like damage leaders, you know, somebody like possessed, and somebody like the assassin adept leader. right? Because with these sort of characters, you kind of just want to go melee and kill them. So you could have like just in case some kind of order. I think that change would just make like order maybe be like a thing on like every single leader. I think every single leader would probably start taking order. Yeah, just in case, you know. But let's get to battle tank. But battle tank, basically the basic version is for free, and it just makes your retreat cheaper. I mean, with the battle tank, you're just going for like the mastery version, because the mastery version also gives you the SP reduction on, what do you call it? This thing, rallying cry, and the more importantly order. I had like this suggestion a long time ago to move also like the rallying cry into like the basic version of the skill, because if you're going for this skill, you're just going there for the order, right? Um, I think the skill would be a lot more attractive if it actually had also the rallying cry, and I don't know if it would be good, but I could maybe like see some kind of a ranged leader who's like a support archer, maybe like, what do you call them? Assassin adept, right? Or like the witch hunter captain. You could like maybe make some builds which would also focus on like the captain, on like the retreat, which have like the retreat, and also focus on like making your front line not flee, not run away, and you could like use like rallying cry, and then like in that cases, if you have like a support archer leader, then you're probably not going to be focusing on, you're mostly not going to be focusing on order, right? Yeah, so I don't like the skill. I think it never happens that I go for the skill. Yeah. Yeah, battle tank basic is trivial, so it's a minor detail but worth mentioning nevertheless. Yeah, exactly. Like this skill costs like nothing, and this one costs like 4 skill points. Like if anything, it just makes it more convenient for, what do you call it? For the hired swords to just like teach it to your leader in advance, to your other leader. So yeah. I don't know. I think it's just kind of bad. Like, and this one, I mean, we can just put this into gods here as well. Maybe like a more fair assessment would be to put orders into like the insane category, and we all know that we are picking battle tank because of the orders. And now fuck it, you always pick those two skills together. Yeah. Okay. And now we come up to like a different sort of a leader, which we don't really see all that much. And this sort of a skill, this sort of a leader is, well, it's like a heroic presence leader. Okay. And this guy has, well, can kind of focus on courage, coordination, and war cry. So let's start with coordination. Let's start with courage. So courage gives you, well, it's like an area around your leader, and like everybody else around you but the leader get plus 20% all alone resistance, plus 20% terror resistance and plus 20% what do you call it, fear resistance. And I was talking about how like Nerves of Steel feels so freaking nice because you get that plus 20% to make your terror topped up to 100%. The only issue that I have with this skill and like all the other skills here, okay, before I get to the issue, let's talk about the mastery. And this is for 2 rounds. The mastery lasts for 3 rounds, and it's like plus 40% instead. Yeah. The only issue I have like with all of these skills is that they don't apply to the leader themselves. In my opinion, like this sort of a leader, which is like heroic presence, who just in my like fantasy, it should be like a sort of a leader because it's like an area around him. It's a sort of a leader that goes in with their men into the fight, and he like supports them while he's like fighting, and he's like attacking and stuff. The other leader, like the flavor of the other leader, in my opinion, is somebody who's like stands in the back. He's like a strategist. He controls the battlefield around him, you know? But yeah, like this, like heroic presence, I feel like that's kind of like the vibe of that sort of a leader. You're just like going in with your men and you're fighting together with them. So to me, it kind of really sucks that you don't also apply these sort of buffs to yourself. Yeah, that's kind of like my issue with these skills. It's kind of annoying. It's annoying me a lot. Because otherwise, like if it doesn't buff your leader, it can get really awkward, like gathering your guys around and like trying to make trying to like buff them up and stuff. Yeah, I think Kitten like did like a much better job at explaining why it is so kind of awkward, like gathering your men around. And I don't think like the sort of a leader is somebody who's like breathing down on your neck and like, hey, be more courageous, you know, or like coordinate, or like war cry. I think the sort of a leader should be going into combat and should. And like, yeah, but we'll get to these other skills later. So this one, I think it's not bad. I think this is kind of like between not bad and okay, just because like the applying of the skill can get awkward, and yeah, it can get awkward like trying to apply the skill around your warband, and it doesn't apply to the leader themselves. At the mastery, it's like 40%. I think it's a little bit better because it lasts longer, but it's quite an investment, like 6 skill points. I don't think it's bad, like, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad. Okay, but let's talk about coordination. This skill is really annoying me as well. And the master. Okay, let me check the chat. Okay, whatever. Nothing. So coordination. Coordination basically gives to the team around you plus 10 initiative, except for your leader, and this one gives plus 20 initiative, except your leader. I like coordination. Like two-turning in the game is incredibly powerful. If you have like any two-turning opportunities, it's amazing. And like this sort of like AoE, in a way, like ready stance, like slightly worse ready stance, it's relevant. Yeah, what annoys me is like how people use this skill in like PvP and stuff. Like I often see just people like going around with coordination and like just buffing their units like it's oh, I'm gonna give them like the coordination buff and stuff. Like you never use it in this way that, oh, I'm just gonna buff my units to have more initiative. No, you basically use it like a ready stance. If you see that you have like a two turning opportunity, that's when you actually bother to use coordination. That's why it annoys me. And the other thing that annoys me about the skill is that, okay, you are able to coordinate your team around you, but your leader gets left behind. Like you coordinate your entire team except the leader who gets left behind for some reason. Yeah. And I don't think, because I suppose the argument could be that, like, isn't this kind of like a better ready stance technically or something like that? I guess that could be like an argument, like for a leader specifically. But then like ready stance gives you like plus 30 initiative, right? This is gonna give you like plus 20 initiative, and it's just for one character. Like this, I think it's okay for these sort of leaders to be able to use these skills just on themselves, you know. I think it's fine. I don't think it's like anything game breaking or something like that. Um, I can see also this skill being used on like some kind of a older leader who likes to play at like the 30 range, and he just stands there around with his like archers in the back, so you coordinate your archers to be able to like two turn somebody like a little bit better or something like that. Okay, so like the basic version, I feel like it's just not bad, just because there's usually a lot less two turning opportunities at just like the 10 initiative difference. And like the mastery gets better because there are more opportunities at like the 20 initiative difference usually. So because it's like an AoE, I can see this being like really good. I think it's like between good and really good. If your team makes sense and it's like logical, I think it's really good. And sometimes you can also just make up for that initiative difference by what do you call it? Yeah, you can make up for like your captain and stuff. You can just kind of swap weapons, but okay. As for the Warcry, the Warcry basically gives you plus 15% increased melee damage and plus 20% increased melee damage. So again, I think this is just kind of like a thing that should also apply to your leader. I think this sort of a leader should have like the flavor, but this guy goes into the fight with the other man and he deals like proper damage. Yeah, because otherwise I feel like this is just a little bit of a awkward older leader. Like you can also use this like on an older leader. I don't think you can get like go bad with this skill, like in general. I mean 15% melee damage is 15% melee damage. I know it's not like a lot because it's like 5 strength, but this is like an AoE, right? So it could translate into, if you manage to buff 5 characters, it could translate into like 75% increased melee damage, you know? So yeah, and 75%, it's more than Daredevil or something like that. Of course, we're not counting the armor and stuff, but yeah. So I think like Warcry is good, but I don't go always for it because it may be awkward like trying to buff your units. I don't know if like the 5% damage difference and the longer duration is worth it. I've used it before. I believe there's also like a discount on the SPUs. No, there isn't. There isn't like any SP reduction on the master. It's just the longer duration of 5% increase more damage, like for 4 additional skill points. Uh, um, that's a bit tricky. Um, like I used this like before on like a magister who was focused on buffing as much damage as possible with like weapons of destruction. Um, yeah, he would just like buff his units and then the units would just go into the fight. Um, I don't know. I don't think like the mastery is really worth it in my opinion. I think it's just kind of okay. Maybe if like the unmastered version buffed the leader as well, and it costs like more SP, and then like this version costs like um gave like a SP reduction or something. Or I think the sort of a skill maybe should be like easy to master, maybe. Damage increasing skills typically have lower increase, like with Daredevil. Mm, I don't know. I think overall I kind of have like I don't think I don't think I would go for it. I think you're gonna be like I think you're gonna be good enough with like the basic version, and the mastery you can kind of I think you can just forget about it in my opinion. I think you should be fine without the mastery. Um oh, and that brings us to the heroic presence itself. Well, let me actually double check. Yeah, heroic presence. So the basic version reduces the cost of the skill courage by 1 strategy point, and it's trivial to train. And the mastery also reduces the cost of coordination and warcry by 1 strategy point, and it's easy to master. So warcry and coordination, they cost 3 SP already. If you have the skill, you're gonna basically have like 1 SP coordination warcries, and that can be like a huge deal. For this one, you would also have the courage to 1 SP. I think that's relevant, like because like this sort of a hero likes to move around a lot. So to be able to buff as many units as possible, or like if they're actually in the combat, in the middle of the combat, then you kind of want to have like SP for stances and stuff like that. I guess the issue might be that you might not have like enough passive slots open for the skill. It's kind of like optional. I don't know, I think like both of them, like this one is definitely like not bad. I can see this being used for maybe in combination with this skill as well. Maybe. And this one is just good. I think this one is good. Like having like coordination cost 1 can be like a huge deal, in my opinion. Yeah, Warcry used to cost 4 SP, it was miserable. Yeah. I don't know, was it? Was it that bad? I guess it sucked. Okay, and that brings us to Born Leader. I need to actually check what the difference is for the Born Leaders. I believe the basic version just gives you like the leader trait and like the leader skills and stuff. And the master gives you also whoopsie daisy. It just gives you stats to make it like a proper. It gives you stats and skill points. Yeah, and some morale to make it like a proper leader. Yeah, I actually like both of them. Like, I really like what happened to this skill in Paramod. Like, this goes like 3 leadership to get it, and this goes like 9 leadership. So, like, if let's say you really don't like some sort of a leader, you can go like right away from like, is this yeah, it is trivial to train as well. So you can right away from level 1 just start with the leader that you prefer, and I think that's really awesome change. I really like it. And then like you can just change them to like the proper leaders like later. It's like both of them are like really good. Or like get the skill from, what do you call it? Hired sword immediately, right? Yeah. I think the only problem that some of the born leaders have, such as Ogre, Ogre has the issue. Ogre and like for example, well, possessed. Like let's say champion. Like if you like want to make like a older champion. Um, yeah, like, but I think like the biggest issue is for the Ogre. Because like she already has to use like one passive slot on like the born leader, and if they want to order people around, they also have to use like the passive skill on battle tank, right? And then you're like left with how many? Like two proper passive slots that they can like use for whatever they want after that only. Um yeah. So that really sucks for them in that case. Um, but other than that, like I love it. It's like it's awesome. Can use it. Yeah, both of them are like kind of like really good, right? And I think that's about it. But yeah, just kind of like to wrap things up with like the leadership skills. Yeah, it's I don't know. I think like some skills could just like make a little bit more sense in my opinion. Like I'm kind of like looking at this section, or like here. I don't know. Okay. All right. So thanks for watching. I'll end the streamer, and yeah, bye bye.